What did we talk about last week? Compassion. Excellent. You remember the definition? Well, we got compassion, so we're halfway there. Sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. So it's the idea that you see them in their pain and you want to go do something about it. So it's another way they put it was feeling another person's pain and wanting to take steps to relieve their suffering. From the Latin, to suffer together. So what I did last week was I basically went and looked at a bunch of stuff in the Old Testament where God says, I am gracious and compassionate. We used Jonah as an example of God being compassionate to people we think are enemies. So we spent a little bit more time last week on loving your enemies and what that looks like. Our small group discussion on Wednesday was really cool. We talked about, it's really hard to love your enemies. It's really hard to love those who are not like us. So part of what we talked about was baby stepping it out, right? What I talked about last week was start loving the people in your circle. And then love a little bit further. Be compassionate a little bit further. Find someone that you don't know or don't understand. Have that conversation, your room is growing, right? Then what happens is you're practicing on little things, and you end up looking back and you have compassion on others, and you can love others, and sometimes those are your enemies. So it's not one day you're going to wake up and go, I just love my enemy. This person's awesome, right? That's not the idea. The idea is you slowly grow. Just like everything we talk about with discipleship, everything we talk about with getting closer and closer to Jesus, it's a process, right? So don't think you have to arrive on day 2. It's a process. Love the people around you, and then slowly step it out. Then the ultimate example of God's compassion was Jesus. So Jesus coming as a man and showing us exactly what it looks like to be compassionate to people around him. How the word of the Lord started with prophets, it came as Jesus and leaves us with the Holy Spirit, so now we can be compassionate to the people around us. So that's the 50-cent version of last week. Now, as one of your teachers, what I want to try and do is show you not just how to. So people come up here and talk all the time. You hear sermons, you hear talks, you hear people say things. And if this is your only engaging with the Bible, if this is your only engaging with the Scriptures, if this is your only engaging with Jesus, then you're going to take what I say and do it. Can we see where that can be dangerous? If one person's talking all the time and you're only listening to them and you're only hearing that one voice, right? So part of what we try and do is teach you to do it yourself. Now, everything we do is in community. When we study the Bible, we study in community. We talk about it. Like, this is what I think, this is what I see, all those kind of things. In community, we all rally around each other and say, that sounds good, right? I can make sense of that. Or, I think you're out of left field with that one. Like, I think we need to relook at that. We do all of that in community. So what we're going to do today, so what I did last week was more of the Old Testament side. So here's my fancy study technique. To find out more about compassion, I typed in compassion and hit search. And it gave me all the Bible verses where compassion was. I took those and I'm putting them on a piece of paper for you. And then what I want you to do in your groups is answer a couple of questions. What's going on in your verse or your passage that I give you? What's the main verse? Like, is there one verse that pops out? What does it say about compassion? Anything else interesting in there? And then any questions that come up from it. We're not going to answer those, but like the idea is to think through it. What I'm trying to get you to do, and I'm being totally upfront with this, is I want you to get into this yourself. All I did was search compassion in the New Testament and did this. You never want to pull one verse. I say never. You never want to pull one verse and say this is what it means. We're going to look at compassion over these 2 weeks, over the entire Bible. We get a full picture of what compassion means, what compassion looks like. It's not about the Hebrew, it's not about the Greek, like all those things are interesting and great, right? And when you get there. But if you just look at what the Bible says about compassion, all the way through, then you get a picture of what compassion is and what we're supposed to learn from it. Does that make sense? So I'm making you do the New Testament version of what I did last week. It's not cheating. It's teaching you how to do it. All right? So take your verse. What's going on? What's the main verse? What does it say about compassion? And then anything else interesting in there. All right. So, a couple of things we're going to do. Claire has the mic. So she's going to come around to the tables, and your one scribe is going to report out. And like normal, you don't get to touch the mic. So Claire is in charge of that. So we need succinct answers, right? So we can get through all the tables. The other things I want you all to do is listen to what your team came up with, your other community members came up with from their verse. And I want to see at the end, we should see a picture of what compassion looks like from the New Testament, right? That's our goal. So we're paying attention to these questions from all of them so that we can bundle it up together and learn from it. All right. Who's got Matthew 14? All right.
All right, Matthew 14. So what's going on? Jesus' friend John the Baptist was risen from the dead and then killed and by King Herod's orders. And his head was brought to his daughter at command of King Herod's wife, I believe, or the mother. The main verse, love thy enemies. What does it say about compassion? Shows compassion from Jesus by healing the people of his enemy. Anything else interesting? Yeah, Jesus withdrawed by boat privately to a place of solitary without outside influence. And then it was also interesting, King Herod was put on the spot by the mother at the dinner event, and the king acted on that pressure. Questions I have, was I supposed to read the verse first before I answered?
No, you did perfect. You did perfect. So, really interesting story. We hear the second half of that story all the time, where Jesus goes and starts feeding people. Starts healing people and feeding people. What you don't hear is the first part of that, where his cousin/friend, John the Baptist, is killed. He goes to escape, and then all these people show up. So what does he do anyway? He heals, right? He feeds. So what you see is compassion looks like healing anyway, right? All right, who's got Mark?
I've got Mark 30, Mark 6, 30 to 34.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Do you want me to read the verse or just answer?
No, just tell us what's going on.
Okay. The apostles are tired, and Jesus takes them away to rest. But the people follow him, and the people have need of compassion and teaching, and so we're going to answer the questions. What is going on? The people needed something. The apostles needed rest. Jesus wanted to help those in need. Number 2, the main verse. Jesus saw the large crowd and had compassion and taught the people. Number 3, what does it say about compassion? Compassion is the most important thing, and it is a community effort. Number 4, anything else interesting? Compassion is the priority. It is selfless. And number 5, this is not an example of empathy, it is compassion. There is a difference between empathy and compassion, and this story is about compassion.
Good. All right, Matthew 15.
Okay, this is the passage that he was talking about, the following passage about after the death of John the Baptist, and he heals a bunch of people and then feeds them. But it is a rather interesting story. He has been suffering himself in grief for John the Baptist, which I didn't connect those passages until you were reading this. So Jesus has been suffering before he meets this huge throng of people. They had all kinds of diseases and everything, and he immediately applied himself to healing them. At the end of that time, he turned to the disciples and said, I have compassion on these people because, and this is the key verse, verse 32. He called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They've already been with me for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry or they may collapse on the way. What he doesn't say is, I'm hungry too. I've been healing these people for 3 days and I haven't had anything to eat. He doesn't say it, but it reminds us of the meaning of the word compassion, that he has been suffering together with him, and that inspired him, that co-suffering inspired him to do something about it. And so that goes on to this description, the feeding of the 4,000. One of the interesting things was that this story of the feeding of the 4,000 is slightly different from the parallel story of feeding the 5,000, whether that's the same event told differently or whether there's two separate events, I'm not sure. But in that one, he says, he tells the disciples after he says, I have compassion, give them something to eat. And then they say, what are we supposed to do? But he's telling them, he's connecting compassion with action by telling them to do something. And I guess that's it.
So this is a great example, and he brought it up. Here's a great...
Mike, you've seen how I respond with compassion.
Yeah.
Now, you're hungry, you're suffering. Now, use that, do your part, and feed those people.
This is a great example, and he brought it up. Hey, this is in different places in the Bible, right? This same story. So one of the questions he had was, is this the same story again, right? So reading this story makes you delve into more things, makes you go different places, right? Makes you connect some dots that maybe you didn't have before. So we've seen healing because of compassion. We've seen teaching because of compassion. We've seen food. We've seen like physical, like taking care of their needs because of compassion. So starting to see a pattern here. All right, Matthew 20. Who's got that one? This table. Y'all are doing great. This is perfect.
What's going on? Jesus and the disciple actually is being followed by a bunch of people, and as they're walking from Jericho, there are two blind men on the side of the road that hear that Jesus is passing by, and they cry out saying, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. So the main verse, there were several different places we thought it could be where Jesus had compassion on them, touched their eyes, they were healed. But then the other thing is Jesus stopped and looked at them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And we thought that was important because so many times, and when we're praying, it's God, I need this, and we expect a response from God. But here he actually paused and looked at them and says, "What do you want me to do for you?" So he engaged them as equals, in a sense. So what does it say about compassion? Well, he stopped, and the crowd was telling the two guys, "Yes, be quiet, be quiet. He's got no time for you." And he actually engaged them. So it says about compassion, he didn't dismiss what they were asking, didn't dismiss anyone, regardless of what their stature was. And also, we determined that these gentlemen, these two blind men, had to be educated or learned in the law because they didn't call him Jesus. They didn't call him Isaiah. They called him Son of David. So they knew his position, his authority. So it wasn't that they were uneducated and beggars or anything like that, but they I don't know what caused their blindness, but they were familiar with the law. Anything else interesting? That they were not swayed by the crowd telling them to be quiet. He doesn't have time for you. And that Jesus, that they were educated, but then also that the fact that Jesus took the time and when he had compassion on them, and he responded to their need. He met the need that they had. Oh, and then it actually said he touched them in the healing aspect. So it wasn't that he, it just, in the healing touch, that's where it came from. And the questions, it was brought out that when we talk to God, do we listen to hear from him saying, "What would you have me do?" Or do we just blast through a bunch of stuff? So are we hearing from him saying, what would you have me to do? So we need to pause in response to that.
Thank you. Healing again, right? But you notice this one was one of those, like you brought it out. He stopped, he looked at him, had compassion on him, right? All right, Luke 15. Is that this table? I told him I gave them the hard one, so.
So Luke 15, 11 to 32 is the story of the prodigal son. So there are two sons, and one asks his father for all of his part of the inheritance. And of course, the father's still alive, so basically what the kid is saying is, "Gee, Dad, I wish you were dead so I could have your stuff." So he takes off, and he wastes everything, all of his inheritance, loses it all, and then he's taking care of pigs. And so from there, he comes to himself and says, "Oh boy, this is bad, but wow, even the least of my father's servants have a pretty good life. So I think I'll go home and see if Dad will take me on as a hired hand." And so he does, and as he's going, his father sees him from afar off and races to him and begins to put a robe, ring, shoes on his feet and says, "You're my son, come on back into the family." And then his older brother hears all of the ruckus and comes home, and then he begins to downdress his father because, how dare you receive this horrible child of yours back when I've been the good son. I've done everything you ever wanted me to do. And this son has been a hateful lowlife. So we decided that that the compassion of God is without bound. It has no bottom. It has no top. It is continual. It is endless. But the world around us and religion very often causes us to become judgmental and hard and harsh. But God is continuously looking for us, continuously reaching out to love us and to draw us back into the family. And not just to make life better or give us a place among the servants, but to restore us to full family with all of the rights and privileges that come with being family.
So what's that main verse? What's the compassion verse in that one?
The compassion verse, yeah.
And Wallace was still afar off.
Yes. His father saw him and was filled. It's verse 20. It says but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him.
So you have this amazing picture of restoration, right? Compassion in this case became restoration, which is amazing.
We use the analogy of ourselves. You know, there are so many times that each of us as individuals has gone away from God and sort of said, I'm done with this. I don't believe this. I don't need this. This doesn't make sense. And when we come back, we are always accepted with open arms and with mercy and with compassion. And it doesn't matter what we did or what we said. God is celebrating us coming home to him. And with the older brother, he was upset, but like the father tells him, you have everything. You've been with me this whole way. The reward of heaven is already yours, but we're celebrating because now your brother is going to be there with us.
Restoration's amazing, isn't it? 2 Corinthians 1.
2 Corinthians 1, what's going on is Paul wrote a letter to the church of Corinth to bring comfort and strength to those who are going through various troubles. The main verse that stuck out for us in Corinthians 2, 3 through 5 was verse 4. Verse 4 reads, who comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. That's why verse 4 stuck out on us. What does it say about compassion? Paul gives comfort. Those in troubles receive strength. We need to allow God to comfort us. Also, use the comfort that God gives us to comfort others. Number 4, anything else interesting? This letter is for everybody. It's not just for the people in Corinth or the people in the church of Corinth. This letter is for everybody in the world, us too. And number 5 are questions. The questions that come to my mind is who can we comfort and who can comfort us during our troubles?
So compassion here turned into what? Comfort, right? God had compassion on us. We're comforted, so what should we do with it? Comfort others, right? All right, Philippians. They're pointing. They didn't pick out someone to talk.
Wow. All right.
She has the end of statement follow-up.
Okay, there we have it. Sorry, my phone doesn't recognize my face. Hang on. Okay, so the verse here, is it Paul? He's writing this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. He's admonishing this community, and he prefaces things with, I'm coming to visit you. And he's trying to say, hey, look, if the slightest of any of this exists in you, he said, do it. It's like there's a seed in not only the individuals, but as a community. He's very communal in his thinking because the chapter before, he starts by saying, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come to see you or not, that you are standing firm in one spirit. So he's driving home, and John mentioned this, the idea of not just as an individual, which we Americans can, contextualize this, but as a church abroad community. And he's saying, be in unity in this one thing, which is compassion. Do nothing out of vain conceit, selfish ambition. Put the needs of others ahead of your own. And he says a very peculiar thing about conflict. And I think the only conflict that he desires is the one that's within us. Because he said, it's pretty eloquent. He says, this is a clear sign to them of their destruction, but of your salvation. And he's talking about sacrifice in a way. And he says, and that from God, he says, for it has been granted to you that for the sake of Christ, you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. Engaged in the same conflict that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. So it's this idea of, Jesus frequently showed love pragmatically to his enemies, and he's kind of saying the same thing. He's saying, no matter who they are, they're human. They need to see you in this light. So, I don't know. Does that wrap it up?
Yep, perfect. Beautiful.
So here we see Paul calling this church to be unified, right? If there's any of this in you, do it. So that when the world looks, they see something, right? So comfort in this case becomes that unity, becomes that reaching out, like we're doing it together, right? Thank you, that was great. And last but not least, Colossians.
Or BS. The verse that we found most important was, and over all these virtues put on love, which binds us together in perfect unity, because it all comes back to love. Number 3, what does it say about compassion? Do you want the literal verse or just what we thought?
What you thought.
Okay. That we're all the same in Christ, and that forgiveness is important and that it should come back to love. And then we found it interesting that it says we're all on even playing ground, but that's often disregarded. And then for number 5, I drew a picture of a fish.
Perfect. All right, so y'all did a great job. Give yourselves a hand. Like you really did a great job. Especially for me just throwing you this on a Sunday morning when you thought you were going to hear me talk. This is amazing. So going back through a few of these, because part of the exercise was to see these things together, right? We saw healing. We saw teaching. We saw food. We saw like physical things taken care of. We saw healing again. Restoration. Comfort. Unity. Humility. And this end one, there was a bunch of stuff, right? There's a lot in there. What is compassion? Compassion is all of this. I think it was your passage, and so God shows us compassion so that we can show compassion. So all of these things are compassion, and God is showing that to us, so we get to show it to everyone around us. And as Paul keeps charging his people that are under his care, it's the same thing I'll charge you because you're under our care. We need to do this together. It's not you going and doing it by yourself. You don't ever have to do that by yourself. We get to do this together. We are agents of healing. We are agents of restoration. We are agents of comfort because that's all been shown to us.